Thank you very much. And thank you, Watanabe-san. Many thanks to Nito and to Mehdi for sponsoring this very special conference, the ICEF conference. I've watched it grow over several years now, and it just keeps on getting better. It's a tremendous gathering of world experts with first-rate discussion on all the topics that will matter for protecting the climate and promoting innovation. We've been particularly pleased to be able to work on roadmaps under the sponsorship of NATO and Mehdi, and that's what we're going to talk about here. Before I do that, I just want to recognize the really special leadership of my friend Hossein at the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. That was very interesting and impressive set of remarks that you just made about what the IPCC is doing. And ICEF is very fortunate to have you as a member of the International Steering Committee, and we're all very fortunate to have you as chair of the IPCC. So thank you. We are today launching two roadmaps, or releasing two roadmaps that our teams have been working on for most of the past year. One of them is on carbon dioxide utilization, and the other is on energy storage. I'm going to talk about the first, and then the leader of the energy storage roadmap is going to talk, Kurosawa-san is going to talk about that. We called this the 2.0 version because a year ago we did the 1.0 version on this topic. In November of 2016 at COP23, we released a roadmap on carbon dioxide utilization. We analyzed CO2 utilization technologies and market potential in a wide range of areas. And we found significant market and carbon dioxide mitigation potential. I should say that this topic is extremely important, particularly given the focus of the ICEF conference on net zero emissions. And there's no way to get to net zero emissions without figuring out ways to sequester carbon dioxide. So we decided this year to build on this roadmap and do a 2.0 version and look at what are the different ways that you could turn carbon dioxide into commercially valuable products. And so we looked at a deeper analysis first of using carbon dioxide to make cement and aggregates. And we thought of that as a near-term opportunity. We also looked at how you could use carbon dioxide to make chemicals, which is more of a medium-term and a short-term opportunity. And then in the longer term, durable carbon materials such as graphene and carbon fiber that today are not big markets, but we believe to grow significantly. We also looked at two cross-cutting issues. We looked at the policy options available for promoting carbon dioxide utilization. And then we looked at life cycle analysis, which is an extremely important topic, as my colleague Julio Friedman will talk about. So today we're releasing a draft. Or today we're releasing the final, excuse me, and the key messages are, the R&D is, our key messages are the following. R&D is required to bring most products to market. Second, market development will require policy support, and life cycle assessment is key. So those are our key messages, and we had a terrific team that was working on this with experts from Lawrence Livermore Lab and other institutions around the country, in the United States. And one of our real stars working on it was Dr. Julio Friedman, who was going to give a summary of the rest of the road. Thank you.
Thank you, David. It was terrific to work with you. It was fun to work on this project, and I'm really delighted with the report as it stands. So as we said, we worked on these three CO2 conversion and use options. Again, near term, looking at cement and aggregates, that is long-lived carbon. If the CO2 goes into cement, it stays there. And that's important from a climate perspective. Here, the technology is fairly mature, and the markets are very large, so that's a possibility for good news. In the midterm, chemicals and a subset of those fuels as well. Some of these end up being durable carbon, like plastics and so forth. Some of these are returned to the atmosphere quickly, but in fact do offset a petroleum-based chemical stuff, and again, that comes out of the life cycle. And then for the long term, durable carbon in the form of these structured carbons like graphenes and diamonds and carbon fiber and all these sorts of things. Here the margins are very, very large, even if the volumes are small, so it's a good way to enter the market, a good way to start the innovation process. A couple of the key messages here, and I would encourage all of you and anybody who's watching from some other place, we actually have a much longer version of this presentation on the ICEF website, so if you'd like more details and images and so forth and discussions on this, images from the report and so forth, I would encourage you to download the report and also to download the full presentation. So one of the key messages from here is that it is in fact a near-term opportunity. We found a surprisingly large number of companies in various stages of development, 30-some companies that are actually going forward, and a handful of them that are already selling products into the market. So this is in fact surprisingly mature for many people to consider. A second, and this is very important, when you turn carbon dioxide into cement, or you turn carbon dioxide into aggregate, or you bind carbon dioxide into cement, the thermodynamics are very good. The amount of energy that is released from converting CO2 into carbonate rocks or cements is as large as the amount of energy that's released turning natural gas into CO2. There is a very large energy drop. And that makes this a very attractive process from an engineering standpoint because you don't have to add energy to make it work. A third point is that in addition to turning CO2 into concrete, you can just mix it in. And in fact, there are a number of companies that are using CO2 to cure the concrete, and you get additional benefits from that. In some cases, concrete might take as long as a week or a month to cure, and it will cure in hours if you use CO2. And it looks like there are many pathways to add more CO2 and to increase the loading of that. One of the challenges in this is you need to actually get the raw materials to bind to the CO2, so metal oxides for the most part. And so there is in fact some near-term opportunities, but expanding those opportunities in association with economic transport and so forth is a challenge that will need more attention. And thinking about commodity chemicals, a very different set of messages here. The first is that there are some near-term opportunities, but some of this will just take longer. And part of the reason why is you need to add energy in. If you're going to turn carbon dioxide into ethylene or methanol or methane or any other, or some sort of feedstock, you have to add energy, and that takes a little while to figure out the engineering and so forth. One of the things that is sobering is how many pathways there are in this technology set. There are literally millions of different ways to think about getting this stuff to market. That's a challenge for life cycle, but it's great from a market opportunity, and it's great from a climate opportunity. There's so many pathways to success that the chance of success is pretty high. In order for this to really work, you do need to add energy, which means you will need low carbon electricity and low carbon hydrogen. And the more of that you can get, the better off you'll be. I would add to that, if you can get low carbon heat, the better as well. These are long-lived challenges, but in fact, we live in a world of abundance, and it is in fact the costs are dropping for low carbon electricity, the costs are dropping for low carbon hydrogen, and that creates market opportunities with it. Not surprisingly, this is a place where research and development is really going to deliver some profound cost reductions, some process improvements, and things like that. In thinking about durable carbon materials, it's the exact opposite of the cement problem. Small volumes, huge margins, and very complicated chemistry, how you get going. So we did see this as a long-term opportunity. There's maybe one or two companies that are close, there's one or two labs that are working on this, but in fact the number of researchers who are working on this is quite small, and it's just going to take a long time to develop. The chemistry and physics is complicated, and so that's a good place to do some work. Because the potential value is high, the market value here is quite large. And I want to stress that we saw an opportunity here which is hard to know from the beginning, but in fact, if you can, through CO2 conversion and use, if you can drop the overall cost of production on this, the market opportunity is in fact very large, and you can start displacing metals, you can start displacing concrete by using these long-lived carbon fiber products. And so the market potential is large, and in the near term, it's very high value. Carbon fiber today sells for somewhere between $10,000 and $100,000 a ton. So in fact, if you can make really high quality carbon fiber, you have a good market to sell into. There is a high leverage here on energy-saving applications. In many cases, you can think about ways of doing this that don't necessarily require a lot of energy, or can take advantage of other energy that is in the system in a way that makes space. There is an opportunity to reduce the energy penalty and the energy cost associated with this, where, again, research can help. Here, you have to do a more than just, Pasteur's quadrangle. You have to do a little more than just, applied science and stuff. There's some really fundamental questions here where basic R&D will also help deliver the goods as well as more applied R&D. Sure, this will work. Here we go. Something that we spent a little bit of time on is that there are some cross-cutting research and development issues where new platforms and new approaches are very valuable. I will be very brief with this. I'll be super fast. I encourage you again to look at the report. One of them is catalysis. If you know you're putting energy into this, using less energy helps. It's born as an efficiency play, and thinking about photocatalysts and electrocatalysts and thermal catalysts and biological catalysts, there's a lot of work to do here. All of these processes would benefit from improved catalysis. In the same thing, there's new ways to design reactors now using advanced manufacturing, in particular 3D printing and so forth, that are just beginning. So for example, you can embed these catalysts in resins, and you can print out reactors that do chemical work and conversion at the same time as gas separations. There's an endless range of things that can be done here, and we're just starting on that. So investment actually in reactor design, investment in advanced manufacturing helps all of these. Trying to figure out better ways to integrate these with CCU and CCS will help. There are some places actually where you may be able to save a step, where you may be able to recover additional energy in the process and so forth, and that is an area which again will benefit all of these things. Finally, we think that it is worth spending some time just identifying barriers to scale up, and one of the things, for example, that we found as an issue are standards. In many of the cases, procurement standards in the industry are compositionally based. If you have a new composition, it's very hard to sell. And so working on things like standards it takes some time, it takes some research, it takes some work, and putting some effort into that will help the deployment of all of these and the speed of market capitalization. 2 quick points on the life cycle and then on policy. I can't stress this enough. From a climate perspective, life cycle is essential. You simply can't get what you need if you don't do good life cycle analyses and careful life cycle analyses. In fact, the energy modeling and the life cycle analyses community really need to start working together on this stuff. We found that there was just not enough human capital working on it. There's not enough people, there's not enough institutes, there's just not enough work going on. That's a really good investment for a little bit of research money. You can make a lot of progress. Similarly, the CO2 community should be learning the lessons from these life cycles and thinking about not just how to make the product as quickly and as cheaply, but to really minimize the environmental and climate footprints. Finally, getting a point answer ain't going to deliver. You really need to look at the whole systems context of these things, and that's exactly what life cycle is about. Many people like to draw their systems boxes small. We're encouraging people to draw them large. Ultimately, the climate is important, but there are other environmental considerations. Water, byproduct pollution. These things need to be conscious in the life cycle analysis as we bring these things to market, or else we're just buying a different problem. The last is policy is essential. In some cases, you can enter the market with a competitive edge, but that's small. You just need some policy support, like any other clean energy technology. To start, you keep coming back to R&D. If this stuff doesn't exist yet, you want to create it, let's put some money into it. Mission Innovation has identified this as a particular threat. There are 23 countries that have signed on. There's 20 countries that were just at Houston for the Mission Innovation Roadmap R&D needs. So there's plenty of work to be done, and that's in fact a policy decision. Doubling or tripling or quadrupling the R&D budget in this isn't helpful. Just for a frame of reference, the entire US budget on this is $10 million a year. 2 years ago, it was $500,000 a year, but it needs to be more like $40 or $50 million a year for this industry to take off. For those of you out there who are policymakers, if one country wanted to try to dominate the carbon fiber market today, this is how you do it. Climate mitigation benefits are not captured by the markets. You need policy support to get there. That shouldn't surprise anybody. And as I said, there are these market barriers, like standards and so forth, that need to be identified and need to be worked through as policy positions. That's the end of my presentation. I do want to though thank again our hosts. I do want to thank ICEF. It was absolutely one of the best conferences I've ever been to. I'd encourage all of you to go back in 2018. Thank you very much. Yeah, lots more on the website. I encourage you to come.